Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and what we're doing today is actually another product review, this time for another Corsair product, and this is going to be the Corsair Strafe RGB keyboard. Now this is going to be in the same family of products as the Corsair Saber RGB mouse, which we talked about before, and that's going to be the RGB color line. Now what that line does, if you didn't watch the previous video, is it allows you to do full customization of the product as far as the colors that you want, with some 16 million different color combinations. Now with this particular product, it's a little bit different than what we had with the mouse. The mouse, you have 4 different zones that you can actually customize in the color. On the keyboard, every single key can be customized however you actually see fit. So it's got a lot going for it customization wise. As far as the packaging is concerned, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's well packaged. It seems to be very informative. You've got a lot of information about the product on here, specific to different things like the statistics and what it can actually do. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open this up and focus on the product, because the product is what matters, and that's why you guys are watching this video. All right. So I'm sure that's a real good looking pose right there, but there you have it. You got instructions like we had before. In here you got some vacuum sealed keycaps along with a key puller. Now what these are going to be is kind of rubberized textured keycaps. So you've got your MOBA set up, and you also have your FPS set up, as well as the keycap puller. And then past that, inside of here is where we've got the meat and potatoes of this thing. And that's going to be the keyboard itself. Now the keyboard is relatively heavy. One thing that I notice immediately just looking at this is there's not a lot of wasted space along the edges, which is a really nice touch, because there's a lot of situations where keyboards have a really big bezel on them. My G710 Plus keyboard, which I love, has these like sloped angles on it, and you don't have that, so it's not taking up unnecessary desk space. In addition to this, we also have the wrist rest, which is also somewhat soft but texturized, so your wrist isn't going to be sliding around. The wrist rest is detachable, so if you don't like it, you don't have to use it. For me, I find it almost a necessity, just because during long sessions, it feels a lot better to be able to rest your wrist on it as opposed to kind of hovering or bent in a weird formation. Other things to talk about with this keyboard, the spacebar is texturized as well. I've never had that on a keyboard before, so I think that's an interesting touch. And then you can see, hopefully, that you've got all the different the LEDs that are actually built in below the keys for you to actually be able to customize each one of those. In addition, you also have the USB pass-through on the back, which is a really nice touch. Especially for those of you that are concerned about cable management and keeping everything clean. That's become almost a mandatory feature for me when I'm talking about keyboards, because, like I mentioned in the previous video, I have to plug in a ton of stuff, and sometimes it's just a lot nicer to be able to plug it into the keyboard instead of having to dig around behind the case. Now, this keyboard actually features the new MX Silent cherry switches. Now, I've used blues, I've used browns, I've used reds. Ultimately, the one that I've to this date really appreciated has been the browns, because you get the responsiveness without that blue click. Now, it's still a relatively noisy key, the brown is, but compared to other mechanical switches, it's actually quite a bit quieter. This, on the other hand, is the silent. Now, it's not totally silent. I'll try and get this close so you can hear it, but it is really damn close. And as far as the responsiveness goes, it feels like a mechanical keyboard. It's not as crisp as some of the others, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But it is a lot more than a membrane keyboard. And for me, when I'm making content, being able to not have the loud clickety-clack is a really big deal. Or for those of you that just hate that sound, or maybe you're playing in a room with a sleeping infant or dog. So that's kind of a nice touch. Other than that, you get some additional things. It looks like you've got a brightness option up here, as well as the Windows lock, which I'm assuming is going to be for when you're gaming, to probably disable your Windows key to prevent you from getting booted out. I'll need to verify that's what that is, but it sure looks like it based on that button. And again, on the back, you've got the flip up little legs. And finally, like with the mouse, you get the very customizable, or not very customizable, very recognizable USB ports, so it's going to be a little bit easier to know which one you need to pull. The reason you have two, one is for the keyboard and one is for the pass-through. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to get this thing plugged in, get the software installed, and then we're going to start talking about the color customization and really show it off from there. Alright guys, once we actually get into the Q software, it's very similar to what we had with the mouse that we reviewed. Down in the right hand corner, you're going to have the ability to check which one you actually want to work with. We've already shown off the mouse, so let's go ahead and talk about the Strafe. And again, you end up having the display of the keyboard right in front of you. Now over here you've got profiles where you can actually download and create your own profiles, which I'll show you in just a little bit. But I wanted to go ahead and show you how you can get into lighting and play with some of the current customizable effects. Right now we're on the rainbow wave, which is slowly moving across the screen. If you want it to actually move faster, you can do that by actually just changing it, and you can see that the wave starts moving a lot quicker. Some of the other built-in ones are pretty cool. You got the spiral rainbow, pretty neat. You also have the visor, which kind of bounces back and forth while alternating colors. You can actually choose what colors you want, but the random's kind of cool. Rain. I really like rain, actually. Just from being fun to kind of look at, it's a interesting effect. Again, you can change what colors you want it to be and also the speed. And then we have some very similar ones like we had before, where you've got things like color pulse, where it bounces back and forth between a couple different colors. And that's going to be whatever you actually choose. So those are going to be kind of some of your general ones. It kind of follows a similar guideline and time frame and everything that we have on the mouse. It's just a lot more that actually displays the colors. I mean, you can see I'm in a dark room, but the colors are pretty bright and really kind of nice. So let's go back to the spiral rainbow. And I mean, it puts out some good light. And you can tell that the white underneath is actually doing a really good job of reflecting those colors, which is the reason why this ends up looking as good as it does. Now, I ended up creating a couple profiles, and I'm going to take you through one in a minute when I'm going to switch over to my webcam. We'll go to potato quality because I need both of my hands to do this. But one thing I plan on actually doing is working through a couple different HUDs for some Star Citizen ships. So for example, here's an Aegis HUD that I'm working on. It's very basic at the moment. But basically what I wanted to do is take a similar color, and it's slightly different colored based on what I'm seeing on my camera and what I see on my keyboard. It's very close to that Aegis green that we've come to see on the HUD, with the orange color going through the middle is actually very close to the enemy's color when you see them on the map. So what I tried to do here was kind of simulate what would be almost like a targeting scanner, kind of searching the area to see if it could find an enemy ship. I wish this color looked a little bit closer to what it actually does on my, in real life, but you get the idea. I also plan to do kind of some blue ones. I want to try and see how proficient I can get with this, because I think this is going to be one of those things that's really going to help to bring Star Citizen out of the screen and onto the keyboard, because you could start to match some of the components that you have in game. So that's kind of a general overview on some of these profiles. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to download a profile and then set one up as well. So outside of just using this to make things look cool, which is a really good reason to use this keyboard, or really any RGB keyboard, you can actually use it to kind of help you with your in-game play, specifically in a game like Star Citizen, where there are a bunch of different keys out there that you need to remember. So you can technically use this to kind of break things down into different, almost into different categories, if you will. So you can kind of get a better idea of what keys you need to push when. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break these down into different groups. The first one, let's make it power and shields. And there's a bunch of keys that fall into these categories, so let's just start grouping them together. 4, 5, 6, I think 0 is one. Then we have minus and plus. And I'm holding control while I'm selecting all of these. So now that I've got all of these actually selected at this point, what you can do is then go ahead and assign a color to it. Now with this being power and shield management, a lot of times on those HUDs it actually ends up being like a green color. So let's go ahead and pick something about like that. And you can see on the keyboard, those have now been selected in that color. So let's go ahead and move into a different group. And you don't necessarily have to do this. I like to break these down into different groups just to make it easier to remember. Let's do targeting. And with targeting, we have things like T and Y and U, H, J, C, comma, and L. Let's make targeting kind of a yellowish color. And there you have it, displaying on the keyboard. And obviously you could make these whatever you want them to be. And I haven't really put much thought into what colors I want to use for these, but let's go ahead and just make flight. So we get the first part of the QWERTY selection. We got ASD, which is including your rolls. You got shift for your afterburn, your space brake, your IFCS switch, your max and minimum throttle, caps lock, and N and M. Let's make those kind of stand out a little bit. Let's go with like a bright light blue or something like that. Oh yeah, those pop nice. Pow! Okay, let's continue on this little journey. New group. Let's do countermeasures and lights. This will be a fast one. Lights, countermeasures. Those are going to be pretty important things that you're going to want to find quickly. So let's go ahead and do red. Pow, pow, pow. Kind of stands out and clashes a little bit, but again, the colors are up to you. And then let's do modifiers. It's going to be Control, Alt, and Alt. And we're going to make those orange. And let's do one last group of just general game stuff. And that's going to be your like AR and chat boxes. That's going to be these three guys over here. It's also going to include these arrow keys for navigating the HUD. Let's do right control for another HUD function. Escape, tilde, tab for scoreboard, and then we have semicolon and quote as well, and we'll make those white. And then what you're looking at on this keyboard is actually a customized mapping of what these different things do. So you still need to remember what functions they do, but at least as you're learning and getting more comfortable with it, you can actually have this assigned in a way that's going to help you with memory. So if at least you know if you need to hit a button to make your ship move, I'm going for one of these blue options. Or if I need to actually do something that's not pre-selected on a main button, I need to use one of the modifiers to actually make that happen. So again, these colors are totally customizable and you can do what you want with it, but it's nice having the ability to change things into a way that makes it easier for you to remember. So if you want to actually come in and check out some pre-made profiles, there's a lot of them that have been done by the community, and it's actually hosted on this website, on Corsair's website, under the RGB share. Now, if you come down and scroll down a little bit, you've got these broken down into the different keyboards. Now, what you're going to see is there's a lot of these profiles that work regardless of which keyboard you actually have. But if you want to make sure that you're picking one that guarantees to work with your keyboard, go ahead and pick. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Strafe RGB. And I want to show you how easy this is to actually update a profile. While actually creating a profile isn't that easy in this program, it's not real intuitive, installing a pre-existing profile that somebody else made is a very easy process. So let's say I'm interested in this Strafe electricity keyboard profile. We'll go ahead and you get a little picture or a video to get a preview on it. Yep, looks cool. We're going to want that. Just hit the download button, fill out the CAPTCHA. Save the file. Go ahead and go back into your queue. Let's say we want to make a new electricity profile. You can see the keyboard lights all went off at this point. Now what we're actually going to be doing is importing a new one, so we didn't really need to do that step, but what I wanted to do is just turn it off so you can see what this is going to look like once you actually get it in place. And there you have it. So all you really need to do is download and import, and then you've got this whole variety of different RGB profiles that are out there. So like I said, while the actual programming of all these keys is kind of difficult, the actual getting other people's profiles installed is very easy. Overall, this keyboard's been a lot of fun to use, and overall, I'm a fan of it so far. The MX Cherry silent keys are a really nice balance of responsiveness and silence, and while they may not be quite as quiet as a membrane or a dome keyboard, it's so close you're really not going to notice the difference. There are a few keys that end up producing a slightly different sound than others. Most notably on my board, it's the backspace key. And it can kind of catch your ear and just make you wonder a little bit why it sounds a little different. Now I will say though, for those of you that have become accustomed to the significant tactile response of the blues or the reds, you may miss that quality in this board, or really any that come to use the MX Silent switch. But while you may not have that feel, it is incredibly responsive, and I don't find myself having issues like missing keystrokes or anything like that. And after putting in quite a bit of game time with the Strafe, something that I thought I was going to be kind of minor is something I've really come to appreciate, and that's the textured palm and wrist rest. It's comfortable, it keeps you in place, and it gives you an extra level of control and placement, and I didn't really expect that out of it when I thought it was going to be a pretty minor detail. The lighting on this board is impressive and sometimes kind of insane, and the things that you can do with it are really wide-reaching, but the Q software, while being usable, isn't real user-friendly either. Now, the more I play around with it in there, the easier it gets to understand and to use, but if you're expecting to unbox and become a pro at making some wild patterns happening, I would suggest you alter those expectations. There are a lot of guides and instructions, so you can get there, but it is a little challenging for the first-time user. The other thing I would like to see from this board is some enhanced onboard memory if possible, because while you can assign certain schemes to boot up for certain games, it would be nice if I could end up changing the color scheme based on what I'm doing in-game without having to back out to the Q software. You know, for example, if I'm flying in an Aegis ship, I may want a profile that matches that HUD. If I land and then get into FPS combat, and then I could just hit a button and switch to that color scheme. And then get into an RSI ship, and then I could have a scheme that matches that HUD. It's a very minor detail, but some color scheme changing ability in-game would have been a nice addition. I love that there isn't any wasted space on this board, which has really brought me an extra 3 inches of desk space. And when I'm flying with a Whooshes and have a keyboard and have a mouse and a mouse pad, 3 inches is a lot, because now I have that extra room to put a larger mouse pad in place for when I get out of the ship and get into FPS combat mode. I think this keyboard is a great option for most of you, and performance-wise, I haven't noticed any real decrease in my gaming performance. But what I've gained in return, though, is a much quieter keyboard, which is better for recording, and full customization of the color schemes, which I think is a really nice touch and kind of adds something to my gaming desk area. I'm actually thrilled about this board so far because it's just flat out fun. It's really good, it's really quiet, and my gaming performance doesn't pay the price for those kind of novel additions. All in all, the board gets it pretty right, and if you can deal with the lighter and less tactile key press, it may be a good option for you. So if you have questions about this board, please let me know. Otherwise, as always, stay tuned for a whole lot more content. I'll talk to you guys soon, and have a good day. Take care.